Most history books tell one side of the story, European empires expanding across Africa. They rarely explain how African states resisted, and I don't mean just fighting back. I mean resisting with strategy. This is the story of Samory Touré, a man who built an army, a government, and an economic system all to stay independent. For 17 years, he held off the French Empire, not because he was invincible, but because he adapted faster than they ever expected. Samory Touré was born around 1830 in what is now Guinea. As a young man, he was captured by a rival group, but instead of accepting defeat, he negotiated his own release by agreeing to serve in their army. When he finally returned home, he didn't come back beaten, he came back with a plan. He used what he learned to build influence, gather loyal followers, and turn regional power struggles to his advantage. By the 1870s, he controlled a massive territory stretching across modern-day Guinea, Mali, Côte d'Ivoire, and Sierra Leone. What's crucial here is that he wasn't born a king or a noble. His authority came from his strategic mind and the loyalty he inspired, not from his bloodline. He earned his power, step by step, but Samory knew that personal power was fragile. To truly stand against an empire, he needed to build a state, so he created a centralized government. He appointed governors to manage provinces, established systems for collecting taxes, and used his army to protect vital trade routes. He even opened diplomatic relations with neighboring rulers. His military, known as the Sofa Army, was a professional force. These soldiers were trained, organized, and loyal to the state itself, not just to him as a leader. He understood the importance of modern weapons and cleverly imported firearms through his trade connections with merchants on the coast. He also dealt with powerful neighbors like the Asante Empire for resources and political alliances, but it's important to be honest about the cost. His state wasn't perfect. He used forced labor to supply his army and relocated entire populations, which caused immense hardship for local communities. Ignoring these realities turns history into a myth. Understanding them shows us the true human cost of resistance. When France began its aggressive expansion into West Africa, Samory didn't just wait to be surrounded and overwhelmed. He employed a brilliant and frustrating strategy of delay and adaptation. First, he would negotiate treaties with the French, not because he trusted them, but to buy himself precious time to prepare when the French armies advanced. His forces would employ scorched earth tactics, destroying any resources the invaders could use, like food and water sources. Most importantly, he wasn't tied to one location. He would relocate his entire capital, moving his government, his industries, and his people further inland to avoid being trapped. This wasn't just about fighting battles, it was a grand strategy of survival. An attempt to outlast an empire that had far more industrial resources than any African state could ever hope to match. It's easy to say the Europeans feared him, but that simplifies things. What they truly didn't expect was the sheer scale and duration of his resistance. They couldn't believe an African leader could be so organized and so resilient for so long. By 1898, the relentless pressure from the French, combined with disrupted trade routes and the overwhelming technological gap, finally took its toll. After years on the move, Samory Touré was captured. The French exiled him to Gabon, where he died 2 years later in 1900. So, does that mean he failed? Not at all. His legacy isn't that he never lost a battle. His true legacy is that he made the conquest of his territory incredibly expensive for the French economically, militarily, and politically. He proved that African resistance was not a disorganized, chaotic affair. It could be strategic, disciplined, and incredibly effective. He forced one of the world's mightiest empires to fight for every inch of land for nearly 2 decades. So why does Samory Touré's story still matter so much today? First, it shows African agency. These were not passive victims of colonization. They were active participants in their own history, making complex choices under immense pressure. Second, his life is a masterclass in statecraft. We see his choices, his mistakes, and his incredible ability to adapt. And third, his story teaches us about the limits of resistance. Not every fight ends in a clear victory, and that doesn't diminish the courage or the intelligence of those who fought. Romanticizing resistance turns real history into a fantasy. But by examining Samory's actual decisions, we get a much clearer, more complex picture of that entire era. If you want to explore more history that doesn't rely on simple narratives or one-dimensional heroes, make sure you subscribe. This channel isn't about proving that Africa was better than anyone else. It's about understanding what actually happened, the wins, the losses, and the incredible realities that most textbooks just skip right over. Thanks for watching.